So just when I thought that sentiment could not get any worse, I hop on Twitter today. And I think it's like 1 out of every 100 people are still bullish. It's wild. Okay, so we've had about $1.4 trillion wiped off the crypto market over the past like 5 weeks. That's a lot, okay, especially with a small market cap of like we have in Bitcoin or crypto altogether is very small compared to gold, real estate, pretty much everything else, okay? So with that said, let's go over to a top signal that just happened. You're going to want to listen to this. Cameron Winklevoss says, this is the last time you'll ever be able to buy Bitcoin below $90,000. Now, this reminds me a little bit of when Saylor was saying, oh, we're never going to get into another bear market again around, what was it, 120 something thousand dollars. And that marked a local top, okay? But here's the thing. Should you be worried about this? Let's go over this, okay? I think people are in such panic mode right now. They need to essentially pan out a little bit. And here's a great tweet from Credible. I know I keep bringing this guy up, but this is really good. So he says, and for the record, the last two major corrections on Bitcoin on a road to $126,000 were greater than the current one in percentage terms. Okay, you need to look at percentage terms. Don't look at the dollar amount. You look at percentage terms. That's how investors invest. They don't look at dollar amounts, they look at percentage. Okay, now he goes on, even with Bitcoin at $89,000, which we went to around like $89,300. So he goes on to say, so any argument for bearishness here, which uses the current 30% drawdown as justification for that stance, is frankly silly. And now look at this graph right here. So the first like major correction that we had in Bitcoin, it was a 34% dip. That was strong, you know, I remember that. You know, I was like, okay, well, that's pretty brutal, but that's completely normal. A lot of people turn bearish. Like I said in my last video yesterday, a lot of people turned bearish during that time. And then we proceeded to go to all-time highs. And then we had a 31.88% correction. And then we proceeded to go to $126,000. Now we're down about, actually less now because it popped about around $89,000, but let's just say we're down about 29%, 28%. We're still, or actually let me just read my tweet today that I wrote at Sir Crypto Tips if you want to check me out there. If Bitcoin corrects to $90,000, it would be a 28.5% correction from $126,000. That wouldn't have been, so now I go back into history because I can go off history to see where we could be heading. People like give me a very hard time on Twitter because they're like, oh, this is completely different bull market. Sure, but history rhymes, as Mark Twain said, okay? So I go on to say that wouldn't have been the smallest major correction in 2017, 2018 bull market, which was 29%. The rest were in the low to high 30% range, and we had 6 of those. So yeah, I'm incredibly bullish still. You know, I'm happy to stand alone. You know, I remember buying Bitcoin at like one of the first major corrections that I had. I actually bought the top at $1,150. I think it was around then, back in 2013. And I can imagine, like, if I had gone on Twitter now and bought the equivalent to like all-time highs and say, hey, I'm dollar cost averaging and I sold my favorite camera, which is what I did. I sold my favorite camera lens. I would have got ridiculed. But you imagine like now I'm like, okay, I still hold that Bitcoin and it's done amazing. That little camera lens, which was only, I bought for like, you know, $1,300, could now have bought me a nice car. That's just because I buy and hold. I dollar cost average, I'm a value investor. I see the value in Bitcoin and I just hold. So let's go over to Kobeissi letter to show you why you should be holding Bitcoin and not be panicking, guys, okay? The US is preparing a $2,000 stimulus package, okay? So they're just going to give everybody that makes under, I think it's $100 to $150,000, a $2,000 check. They're printing that. Remember what happened in 2020, March 2020, during the COVID thing? They gave money out to pretty much everyone, and what happened? They ended up buying Bitcoin and other crypto, and it just went skyrocketing. That's when we hit, I mean, we bought them that March 2020 at $3,500 or something like that, and we went to $69,000 a couple years later. That wasn't a bad return, was it? Okay, so let's keep going. Japan is preparing for a $110 billion stimulus package. China has approved a $1.4 trillion stimulus package. The Fed is officially ending QT, which, guys, they were printing all along. There was no quantitative tightening. They claim they officially stopped it on December 1st. Now, also, the U.S. is issuing $1.9 trillion in treasuries per year. Global M2 money supply, it's over $130 trillion. And also, global M2 money supply is at a record $130 something trillion, okay? And global rate cuts are about 320 plus over the last 24 months. So countries are essentially devaluing their currency. When you hear a rate cut, you don't have to be very smart to figure it out. It's just devaluing your currency. And Kobeissi letter also says at the bottom, very important point, in what world is another wave of inflation not on its way? Guys, it's coming. Like, this is why you have Bitcoin. You can sell it to Wall Street right now. Go for it if you really want to. I'm not going to sell it to Wall Street, and I have cash on hand to buy even lower than this. You know, that's why we have learningcrypto.com, so we can share our trade alerts, okay? That's one of the reasons why we started that, to guide people into dollar cost averaging. Because you know what? Back in 2022, we were buying Bitcoin publicly at $16,000. Yes, I missed the bottom by $500, but I'm not crying, am I? Because Bitcoin's at $90,000 right now. Now, here's one more nail in the coffin, which is going to make central banks, especially in the United States and Europe, print to oblivion. Okay, this is universal basic income. This is what's going to happen after this. Content produced by AI is now appearing on the internet in greater volume than content produced by humans. This is per Axios. Look at this chart, guys. So it's very obvious that many people are going to lose their jobs. They're going to need to put food on their table. And the only way to quell those people from revolting is to give them food on their table, whether they made money or not. So they're going to give them money. And how are they going to give them money or currency? They're going to print so much currency, it would make your head spin. And guess what loves currency printing? Bitcoin. So with that said, you should be liking and subscribing this video, okay? Sharing it to as many people as possible. And just know that I'm on your side. I've already took about 30% profits, but I'm keeping the rest in there. There's a reason for that, and there's a reason why I'm not panicking, and I just went over that. So with that said, like and subscribe. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. If you think that we are in a bear market, and tell me why you think we're in a bear market. So with that said, talk to you guys soon.